Welcome to a world where magic reigns supreme. Our story follows a gutsy underdog who dares to enroll in the prestigious Regarden Magical Academy. His dream? To become a legendary Magia Vander. But there's just one tiny problem. He can't use magic. At all. Talk about a plot twist. Driven by a promise to his childhood friend Elfaria, who has already made history as the youngest Magia Vander. He is determined to become a Magia Vander himself and reunite with her at the place they once envisioned. At the academy, he endures relentless bullying from both students and a teacher, who scorn him for being talentless in a realm where magical ability reigns supreme. But this boy refuses to let their harsh words define him. He understands that true strength lies beyond mere spells. But our boy isn't about to let a little thing like no magic stop him. Nope. He dives headfirst into danger, tackling treacherous dungeons and going toe-to-toe with monsters that would make your average mage run for the hills. And when he's not risking his life, he's hitting the books hard because brains before brawn, am I right? With his trusty sword by his side, he's determined to level up and show everyone what he's made of. As he navigates this daunting journey, his resolve only deepens. He stops at nothing to achieve his dream of becoming a Magia Vander and reunite with Elfaria, proving that heart and perseverance can shine brighter than magic itself. Will Serfort is a boy who can turn the world on its head. Thus, the tale of the union of wand and sword begins. Wistoria unfolds. At Regarden Magical Academy, magic is everything. It's like being in a school where everyone's a TikTok star and you can't even figure out how to post a video. So, how's our magicless hero supposed to make it in this spell-slinging paradise? Simple. By diving into monster-infested dungeons and showing everyone that a sword can be just as epic as a wand. Talk about thinking outside the box. In the capital of the magical realm Urbis lies the renowned Regarden Magical Academy. Professor Edward Serfants lectures on channeling magic to catalyze a brilliant flame. He calls Will Serfort, a sixth-year student with unique ombre blue hair, to the front of the class for a practical demonstration. Will uses his magic stick and recites a spell to conjure the flame, but nothing happens, leading the entire class to erupt in laughter. Professor Edward scornfully declares Will entirely beyond help, suggesting that all he's good at is reading books. Scion Ulster, a red-haired student, tries to help Will by casting the spell himself, successfully igniting the flame. Scion claims to the professor that he's merely trying to rescue Will from embarrassment. Professor Edward emphasizes that talent in magic earns students respect, while those who possess only theoretical knowledge, like Will, are unfit to stand in these hallowed halls. It's clear he's targeting Will, indirectly urging him to withdraw from the academy due to his lack of talent. After class, Scion and his minions, Lyral Marze and Gordon Beret, approach Will to belittle him further, mocking him for taking out his small cat-like creature, Kiki, to scrape up some credits. Just then, an orange-haired girl, Colette Loire, intervenes, stopping the bullies. Scion asks why she's defending Will, to which she responds that Will is kind and hardworking, and she won't allow anyone to insult her friend. Scion scoffs, declaring that spending time with a no-talent is a waste. Colette encourages Will not to be disheartened by their behavior, and asserts that Professor Edward shouldn't have made him a laughingstock in class. Will feels fortunate to have someone as supportive as Colette by his side. Together, they admire the sky and the warm light bathing the academy's buildings. Will drops some serious lore on us. Picture this: a world plunged into darkness, where no one's ever seen a sunny day. Sounds like the ultimate bad hair day, right? Enter the celestial host, the big bads terrorizing everyone. But then, 5 wizards decide they've had enough of this doom and gloom. These absolute legends, the Magia Vanders, step up, kick some celestial butt, and literally seal the sky. Now they're like the cosmic bouncers, keeping the party going up in the heavens. Colette wonders if the Ice Maiden's wand, Albus Vina, is watching over them from above. Will affirms that Albus Vina sits by a window high up, gazing down at them. The scene shifts to Will Serfort's childhood. He sat with a girl named Elfaria, discussing the sun and moon floating in the sky. Elfaria told him about the sunset on the other side and dreamed of becoming Magia Vanders together so they could see it from the top of the tower. They made a childhood promise to witness the sunset together. That little girl later became the youngest Magia Vander in history, wielding extraordinary magic talent and ascending to the tower. Despite being labeled talentless, Will clung to that promise, striving to stand beside her and see the sunset one day. Back to the present time, Will finds himself in Professor Werkner Norgram's office, receiving a lecture for sneaking into the dungeon without permission. He apologizes and asks for credits. He beams with joy when Professor Werkner offers him 2 credits, and the professor advises him that to become a Magia Vander, he must progress to the Upper Institute before ascending the tower. To do that, he'll need credits for writing, spell work, and praxis. However, since he cannot use magic, he'll struggle to earn spellwork credits. Will explains that's why he focuses on praxis, aiming to accumulate points by venturing into the dungeon. Professor Werkner warns him that advancing solely through praxis is nearly impossible, and advises him to secure 4 more credits by the week's end if he hopes to graduate. Will quickly pulls out his notebook, searching for a monster that will yield the 4 credits he needs. The professor mentions rumors of a Baskerville on the 6th floor. Will's excitement mounts as he hugs Professor Werkner tightly, thanking him. Unbeknownst to them, Cyan Ulster eavesdrops, plotting to thwart Will's chances. Later that night, Will heads to the 6th floor, determined to defeat the Baskerville and claim his credits. The last time he encountered one, he and Kiki suffered burns from its flame breath, making Kiki hesitant this time. Meanwhile, Cyan and his minions also arrive on the 6th floor, intent on killing the monster before Will. Consumed by rage at Will's very presence, Cyan is determined to see him expelled from the academy. As the Baskerville attacks Lyril, he screams in terror. Hearing the commotion, Will rushes to find Cyan struggling against the monster. Cyan's magic proves ineffective, and the monster closes in on him, leaving him gasping and panicked. Will considers helping him, but recalls the torment Cyan has inflicted upon him. Just then, flashbacks of Elfaria flood his mind, igniting his resolve. He knows he must become worthy of her and vows to defeat the monster. With determination, Will leaps into action, unsheathing his sword and declaring that he'll become a lone sword, but will never forsake his promise. The Baskerville's size and ferocity are daunting, yet Will skillfully dodges its attacks, finally leaping onto its shoulder and stabbing down. Scene shifts to Professor Werkner's office. Professor Edward approaches him, expressing concern that Cyan and his friends have gone to the 6th floor without permission. Werkner reassures him, stating that Will is already engaged in battle with the monster. Edward watches in disbelief as Will's moves unfold before him. Professor Werkner remarks that Will is a true outlier, possessing strengths beyond those of any mage. His robust physique and extraordinary observational skills make him the sole warrior in a world dominated by magic. After vanquishing the monster, Will approaches Cyan, checking if he's hurt. Stunned, Cyan struggles to comprehend that the talentless boy he has bullied just defeated a monster he couldn't handle. But the best part is, Will earns 10 credits from his professor. Rewind 5 years and picture 10-year-old Will Surfort. Poor kid's basically the magical equivalent of that person who can't whistle. You know, the one everyone's always telling to just pucker your lips and blow? Yeah, that's Will, but with magic. Everyone's scratching their heads, wondering how this magicless wonder got into Hogwarts 2.0. Plot twist. He's just bait to reel in the real star, Lady Elfaria. Once she levels up to Magia Vander status, everyone's expecting Will to get the boot faster than you can say Expelliarmus. Professor Werkner took him to the headmaster's office, where Miss Cauldron Anuves cast spells with her wand and handed Will a sword. To her astonishment, Will destroyed each spell in mere seconds with his sword. Intrigued by a sword yearning to be a wand, she permitted Will to continue studying at the academy, curious to see how this would unfold. Back in the present time, Professor Werkner lectures the class about advancing to the upper institute of the tower to become a Magia Vander, who reign from the topmost floor of Mercedes Collis. He explains that there are 2 methods for advancement: creating a new type of magic or earning 7,200 credits at the academy. Suddenly, he shouts that every student is at risk of not graduating, let alone advancing to the upper institute. Tears flow as students realize they will face rigorous treatment. However, Will feels grateful for Professor Werkner's supplementary lessons, unlike other teachers who neglect their students. In the lobby, Cyan's minions exaggerate tales of Cyan defeating a monster all on his own. while Cyan sits quietly, an angry expression on his face, thinking that it was Will who killed the monster and saved him. Spotting Will, Cyan rushes over and grabs his collar, wanting to punch him, but ultimately walks away to avoid making a scene. Meanwhile, Professor Edward stands in the headmaster's office, demanding Will's expulsion, claiming the academy doesn't need a warrior instead of a mage. The headmaster disagrees, asserting that Will has good grades, and if they overlook his lack of magical ability, his overall excellence surpasses that of many other students. She shocks Professor Edward by suggesting that Will could even become a healer or artificer, let alone a Magia Vander. She entrusts Professor Edward with the task of assessing Will's abilities through a test, which will determine whether he advances or is expelled. Will and Colette head to the library to study together. Colette advises Will not to push himself too hard, reminding him that he already has good grades. He shares a saying he learned from Professor Werkner: "The determination to never give up can surpass even magic." Suddenly, Professor Edward appears and instructs Will to come to the spell hall alone. In the spell hall, Professor Edward tells Will he will receive a personal supplementary lesson, his face twisted into an evil smile. He tasks Will with landing a single strike against him. If he succeeds, he'll earn 5 credits. If he fails, he'll be expelled from the academy. Using his Dark Viper wand, Professor Edward unleashes an attack on Will. Meanwhile, the headmaster calls Professor Werkner into her office to observe Will's performance during Professor Edward's test. Professor Werkner watches in shock and pleads for the headmaster to stop, deeming the situation cruel. Professor Edward's magical powers are immense, having reached the pinnacle of the tower, and he is on the verge of becoming a Magia Vander. He uses Dax Darbikins, a low-level dark magic spell, to assault Will, but even that proves overwhelmingly powerful. Will falls to the ground, unable to find an opening in Professor Edward's relentless offense. Professor Edward, embodying the role of the villain, escalates his attack, bombarding Will with a barrage of Dax Darbikins. Will suffers, realizing that defeating him seems impossible, wishing for his sword to fight back. Scene shifts. Colette, worried for Will, knows that Professor Edward has always been unfair to him. Kiki approaches Colette and urges her to bring Will's sword to him. Lying injured on the ground, Will tries to respond as Professor Edward approaches, but his words only fuel the professor's anger. Edward declares that a sword can never reach a wand, and presses Will's head with his foot. Will grasps Edward's leg, pushing him back, and declares his determination to become a Magia Vander to keep his promise to Elfaria. Shocked by Will's words, Professor Edward scoffs at him for making love a reason to strive for the pinnacle of magic. Will replies that he doesn't care if his motivation is foolish. Regardless of how difficult the path may be, he refuses to give up on seeing the sunset with Elfaria after becoming a Magia Vander. Colette arrives with Will's sword. Will dons the special glasses that Elfaria gave him, grips his sword, and stands ready to confront Professor Edward. He slices through Edward's magic spells with his sword, though fear grips him. His legs and hands tremble at the thought of being burned again by the terrifying volley of flames. He contemplates fleeing, but summons his courage, recalling how a dwarf defeated a mage in the Battle of Garzaronso. Injured and bloodied, clothes torn, he leaps forward, slicing through Edward's magic spells and finally landing a strike, creating a scratch on Edward's face. He successfully lands a hit and earns 5 credits, but it feels more like torture than a test for mere credits. As Professor Edward exits, he finally acknowledges that Will can execute a slashing attack capable of overcoming magic, recognizing his undaunted spirit throughout the ordeal. Meanwhile, Will's roommate Rosti is cooking dinner, waiting for Will to return. Flashback time. Picture this. Elfaria is about to level up to the tower and she hands Will a pair of glasses. It's like that scene in every rom-com where the guy gives the girl his Letterman jacket, but way nerdier. They're both trying not to ugly cry as Will swears he'll make it to the tower too. He's all, "Nothing's gonna stop us from watching that sunset together." And Elfaria, she's promising to wait for him like he's the last pizza delivery on a Friday night. Cue the sad violin music, folks. Will Surford isn't just your average magicless wonder and certified bookworm. He's also hustling to pay those academy bills. Every morning, he's out there slinging newspapers like a boss. But today's headlines are all about his girl Elfaria. She's not just inventing new magic, she's dropping spells like a DJ drops beats, 12 original ones. Will's heart does a little happy dance for her. Then he spots some juicy gossip. The Upper Institute's placing an order with the Academy, and guess who's the VIP client? Elfaria herself. Will's so hyped, he practically teleports back to his dorm, without magic, of course. He asks his roommate Rosti to craft some magic items for him, planning to gather ice cores from the Frost Walkers. Rosti hands him 3 magic items and shoves a piece of bread into Will's mouth, telling him to take care. Scene shifts to Academy's building. Upon reaching the 4th floor, Will finds it packed with students due to Elfaria's order. He spots a junior named Iris being attacked by 3 monsters. Without hesitation, he leaps in, dispatches the monsters, and saves her. Meanwhile, in the lecture hall, Professor Werkner is teaching a class on the topic of creating new magic. He explains that anyone who manages to create a new magic will leave their mark on history, with their spells studied for generations. He cites Elfaria as an example, claiming she could be called the greatest mage in the long history of the world thanks to her latest achievement. Colette wonders if Will has gone to the dungeon because of Elfaria's order. Will asks Iris if she feels uncomfortable calling him senior, given his reputation as a talentless individual. Iris reassures him that she has no reason to look down on him. He is her savior. She confides that she is also at the Academy to fulfill Elfaria's order, as she wishes to do her part to uphold the sky. Her words resonate deeply. No one has ever seen the true sky, as the one above the magical world is merely an enormous barrier erected by the Magia Vanders with their powerful magic. If that barrier were to break, darkness would once again engulf the world. Iris recounts a harrowing experience when she was surrounded by monsters in a dungeon. Just as death loomed, Elfaria appeared and saved her, prompting Iris to dedicate her life to her. Together, Will and Iris set out to find the Ice Walkers. While Iris struggles to sense any with her magic, Will, ever observant, detects one nearby. To their astonishment, it is a colossal frost rex, far beyond a typical Ice Walker. As the creature attacks, Will swiftly scoops Iris up and moves her to safety. Iris warns him that physical attacks won't work against the Frost Rex, as it can freeze everything it touches. The only way to defeat it is with ranged magic. Undeterred, Will decides to confront it, confident from his previous encounters with similar monsters. He dodges the Frost Rex's strikes with agility and uses the magic item given to him by Rosti to bind it. Knowing the creature is weak against fire, he sets off an explosion with another magic item, annihilating the monster. Iris watches in awe, realizing that the talentless boy she heard about is entirely different in reality. Later, Iris enters a room where a meeting of Magia Vanders is in session. It turns out she is not a student, but a spy sent by the Upper Institute to observe Academy students. She reports on Will, recommending that they bring him to the tower, highlighting his creativity and ingenuity in place of traditional magic spells. The Magia Vanders deliberate about the upcoming magic festival, and Elfaria is present. She is the one who sent Iris to observe Will. Alright, let's break down the magic world's grading system. You need a whopping 7,200 credits to level up to the Upper Institute and eventually join the Magia Vander elite. It's like trying to get enough XP to face the final boss, but in school form. The spellwork test is in full swing, and it's basically Destroy All Monsters, Magic Edition. Everyone's waving their wands like they're auditioning for Hogwarts. Then there's Will, our magicless wonder, who decides to go full Street Fighter on these robo-monsters. Spoiler alert, it doesn't end well. He gets knocked down harder than a Jenga tower, and the sound echoes through the hall like he just dropped the bass at a dubstep concert. The class? They're not exactly supportive. They're laughing so hard you'd think Will just posted the world's most embarrassing TikTok. Their verdict? Once a bookworm, always a spell fail. Ouch. Talk about a tough crowd. After Will's humiliating attempt, a girl named Lihanna Owenzuas steps forward, her aura radiating confidence. With a swift motion, she unleashes a magical arrow spell, piercing the robotic monster with deadly precision. The crowd gasps, some in awe and others in envy. Another student, Wignall Lindor, with his striking green hair, shows off his skills next, effortlessly passing the test as he manipulates the magic around him with grace and power. Julius Reinberg follows, showcasing incredible magic skills with his ice spell, the air around him shimmering with frost. These three are the only students with over 10,000 credits, while Will feels disappointed in himself, having accumulated only 405 credits, not enough to even graduate. As the day of the Grand Magic Festival approaches, Colette, bubbling with excitement, tells Will he must get scouted at the festival if he wants to advance to the Upper Institute. She mentions rumors that the elf faction is prioritizing those who rank highly in magic craft, and her enthusiasm is infectious. Even with fewer than 7,200 credits, she reassures him that there's precedent for a student being scouted and ascending the tower on the spot. Let's provide some background on the Grand Magic Festival. Held by the Reigarden Magical Academy every 2 years, students compete in various contests that showcase their magical prowess. High Magia Vanders descend from the tower to scout talent, their discerning eyes searching for the next great mage. This event features competitions among students from different tower factions, including Thorzeus, the Lightning Lord's Wand, Eliaf Cannon, the Sacred Elf Wand, Incinda Barham, the Flame Emperor's Wand, and Albus Vina, the Ice Maiden's Wand. The current Magia Vander, Mysteria's Noah, the Light Sovereign's Wand, leads these 4 major factions. Colette warns Will that in previous festivals, some individuals known as Watchers have snatched up talented students and taken them to the tower, their intentions often shrouded in mystery. Will feels resigned, muttering that he'll work behind the scenes, convinced that he has no chance of becoming an outstanding performer at the festival. Colette, however, encourages him to participate and change people's perspectives about him, her determination shining like a beacon. Will reminds her of the last time he competed, where he stood out for all the wrong reasons, enduring ridicule and harsh treatment, with everyone wanting him disqualified. The painful memories linger in his mind, filling him with dread that history will repeat itself, but Colette persists, emphasizing that the Grand Magic Festival is a great opportunity to showcase his skills. While exploring the academy later, Colette discovers a hidden stairway leading down from one of the lockers. Will, Colette, and Kiki hear strange noises coming from below and decide to investigate. They find students gambling, their voices hushed but excited as they place bets on who will win the Grand Magic Festival. Scion spots Will among the crowd and becomes furious at his presence, his expression twisted with envy. Colette quickly warns Scion not to speak roughly to Will, her protective instincts flaring up. The truth is, Scion feels insecure due to the 3 top students and fears he might lose to them, his pride on the line. After classes end, Colette asks Will about his plans, expressing her desire to join him, but Will apologizes, stating he will be working at Miss Gina's tavern that night, which makes Colette's face fall, disappointment evident in her eyes. Scene shifts to the tavern. Will and his friend Rosti serve customers as waiters, bustling about as the evening crowd grows. During a conversation with a patron, Will gets scolded by Miss Gina, her voice rising above the din. She insists she needs a permanent part-time waiter, and the customers all agree that Will should take the job. Rosti, always looking out for Will, suggests he ask Professor Werkner for a better job. But Will, fond of the dwarves and especially Mr. Donnan, hesitates, not wanting to say no to them. Just then, Julius, along with 2 friends, arrives at the tavern and spots Will, laughter erupting from him as he mocks Will's presence, the derision clear in his tone. Mr. Donnan, the dwarven cook, becomes angry at Julius's antics, stepping forward to defend Will. Julius, however, reminds him of his place, insisting that as an immigrant, he should know his limits. The dwarves' backstory reveals that their world was destroyed by the celestial host long ago, forcing them to seek refuge in the magical realm. Unfortunately, mages treat dwarves differently than they treat elves, with an underlying bias that runs deep in their society. If a dwarf stands up to a mage, it can have dire consequences, and this discrimination against dwarves reflects a broader societal issue. Julius and his friends order food, continuing to insult the dwarves, their cuisine, and their ancestors with inappropriate words. Will, anger boiling within him, confronts Julius, demanding he take back his words, his voice steady but charged with emotion. In response, Julius kicks a plate of food and flings it at Will's clothes. the splatter sending shockwaves through the room. The look on Will's face transforms. He appears utterly different, as if he could kill Julius with just a glance. In a burst of rage, Will grabs Julius's friends and throws them to the ground, the force causing the table to topple and drinks to pour over Julius's face, humiliation flashing across Julius's features. Humiliated, Julius can't let it slide. He uses his ice magic to freeze everything around him, a chilling wave cascading through the tavern as he attacks Will, pinning him against the wall with a mixture of ice and fury, torturing him with cold, unforgiving magic. But Will meets his gaze with a deadly stare, an intensity that seems to shock even Julius into hesitance, a flicker of doubt creeping into his bravado. Julius challenges Will, claiming he will take his revenge at the Grand Magic Festival by humiliating him in front of all the spectators. Will, feeling the weight of the challenge, accepts with a steely determination, stating that if he wins, Julius will have to apologize to Mr. Donnan and the other dwarves, his words echoing with a promise of justice that resonates deeply in the air, setting the stage for their inevitable confrontation at the festival. It's showtime, folks. The Grand Magic Festival is kicking off, and it's like the Quidditch World Cup meets American Ninja Warrior. First up, the Sky Race. Teams are hyped, having practiced harder than K-pop idols before a comeback. The atmosphere? Electric. We're talking colorful banners everywhere, stands packed tighter than a sample sale, and enough excitement in the air to power a small city. Iris, our undercover agent extraordinaire, is giving the headmaster the 411. The scouts? They're already in position, eyeing everyone like they're judging the world's toughest cosplay contest. Iris, rocking her fake glasses like Clark Kent on a budget, heads off to cheer for her senior. And who's the lucky guy? None other than our boy Will. Let the magical games begin. Previously, Colette had asked Cyan to join her team for the Crown Attack competition. When he approaches her, he sees that Will is the third member of the team, and fury surges through him. "Why is the flunky part of this?" he demands, his voice sharp and full of disdain. Colette explains that she needs Will to participate because his credits exceed those of both her and Cyan, her tone calm yet firm. Angrily, Cyan confronts Will about his interest in joining such a high-stakes competition, but Will remains silent, his gaze fixed on Julius, who has just entered the dressing room with an air of confidence. Cyan grows even more irritated, feeling completely ignored, his fists clenching at his sides. Scene shifts to the stadium. The festival host, Mike Myers, a sixth-year student with an exuberant personality, introduces the guest commentator, Professor Edward, known as the most disliked professor in the academy. The crowd murmurs with mixed emotions as Edward takes the stage, his presence commanding yet contentious. He kicks off the event, briefing the participants on the rules of the Crown Attack competition. Each team, consisting of 3 members, must navigate through various zones, marshland, grassland, and woodland, on their way to the crown, which is placed at the center of the stadium. Teams can choose to race directly to the crown, or attempt to hinder other teams along the way to increase their chances of winning. Professor Edward advises the participants to treat the contest like a real dungeon dive, emphasizing the need for teamwork to tackle unexpected challenges. As the excitement builds, Mike introduces the teams, spotlighting Squad 12, led by the charismatic Wignall Lindor, and Squad 9, led by Julius, as the favorites to win due to their top student status. He then introduces the underdog team, Squad 6, Cyan and his no-talent companion Will. The crowd erupts into a mix of cheers and jeers, some eager to see if the underdogs can defy expectations. As the contest approaches, Professor Werkner shakes Will, expressing his disbelief at Will's decision to enter a contest he believes is impossible for him to win. "Are you sure about this, Will?" he asks, concern etched across his face. But today Will wears a serious expression, declaring to Professor Werkner that he doesn't care if people laugh at him. He is determined to do his best, his eyes glinting with a fierce resolve. Finally, the contest begins. As soon as the match starts, a thick golem blocks their path, its towering figure casting a shadow over the arena. Will dashes forward, prompting laughter from the crowd as they call it a suicide attack. Equipped with a magic gauntlet and aided by Colette's spell, he unleashes a series of deadly punches, defeating the golems effortlessly. The crowd watches in disbelief as the boy they called No Talent takes down the golems without using magic, gasps echoing through the stands. Squad 6 takes the lead as they advance to the next zone, but they soon encounter another trap, a spiked pit designed to ensnare the unwary. Once again, with Colette's help, Will dismantles it with precision, shocking their rivals and the entire academy. Moving swiftly through the Badlands, they continue to outpace the other squads, who struggle to keep up as they face traps they are ill-equipped to handle. Reaching the final hurdle, the Enchanted Woods, Will confronts chain circle traps, deftly disarming them with his sword, his focus unwavering. As they make their way toward the stadium, Will suddenly finds himself attacked by Julius, his enemy who had drawn him into this contest with malicious intent. Simultaneously, Cyan steps forward, unleashing fire magic against Will, fueled by resentment since Will saved his life in the dungeon. With Julius attacking from one side and Cyan from the other, Colette pleads with Cyan to stop, reminding him that they are on the same team. "This isn't the time for this!" she cries, desperation lacing her voice. Cyan refuses, insisting it's time to settle the score and challenging Will to fight. Julius blocks Colette's path with an ice wall, preventing her from intervening. The arena buzzes with tension as the spectators lean in, their eyes glued to the unfolding drama. Despite Cyan launching fireball after fireball at him, Will continues to implore him to stop, insisting it's not the right time for their feud. But Cyan, consumed by his anger, ignores Will's words, his face twisted in fury. Will raises his sword, preparing to defend himself, the weight of his determination pressing down on him. As flames lick at the air around him, he realizes this is not just a contest anymore. It's a battle for respect, for his dreams, and for the promise he made to himself. With his heart racing, he steels himself for the fight ahead. Almost 5 years ago, at the start of their lives at the academy, Will experienced humiliation when someone stuck a poster on his back that read, "I'm a worthless no talent." Cyan burned it and offered Will a chance to become one of his underlings, suggesting it might alleviate Will's constant feelings of wretchedness. Will ignored Cyan and rejected his offer, saying, "Get out of my way." Ever since that day, Cyan harbored deep resentment toward Will. The scene shifts to the present. Cyan continuously hurls fire attacks at Will, who skillfully dodges them, refusing to retaliate. Cyan urges him to fight back, but Will insists he can't, as they're a team. He needs to confront Julius to uphold the promise he made to the dwarves. Scene shifts to the stadium. The scouts are witnessing Cyan's emotional outburst against a teammate, express disappointment in him as a top student. Iris sits beside Rosti, Will's roommate, and Rosti is surprised to see her cheering for Will, especially since the crowd is largely against him. Iris confides that she initially wasn't interested in Will, but now finds herself captivated by his skills. Rosti admits he cares for Will more than anything. Back to the battleground of the contest, Julius tricks the other teams, leading them into traps by conjuring his own statues with ice magic. However, Wignall from the elf faction manages to avoid the trap. Two girls from the elf faction watch Wignall closely, preparing to report his performance to their leader, Eleanor. Will can't help but ponder why Cyan is so fixated on him, and why he is pushing so hard to fight at such a crucial moment when they should be focused on winning. Cyan, having read all of Will's spells, summons a fiery falcon dragon to attack him. Will leaps and slices off the dragon's wings with his sword, sprinting towards Cyan to intervene. Yet the fire dragon regenerates its wings and comes after Will again, assaulting him from all sides, nearly burning him. The audience is stunned to see Cyan not only wielding high-level fire magic, but also capable of summoning a guardian. Cyan yells at Will, demanding to know why he isn't fighting back with everything he's got, like when he defeated the monster in the dungeon. Will asks why Cyan even wants to fight him. Cyan's anger escalates as he questions why. After being ridiculed so many times, Will doesn't hold a grudge against him. Will admits he can't even count how many times he imagined getting back at Cyan, but right now, he has no time. He needs to deal with Julius first. Cyan expresses his frustration at watching Will refuse to give up, even as everyone calls him a no talent and laughs at him. He declares his hatred for the sight of Will, feeling ignored by him all the time. Flashbacks flood Will's mind of when he rejected Sion's offer, fueling his courage to meet Sion's challenge head-on. Sion, now excited, feels that Will is finally giving him the attention he craves. As Sion attacks with the Guardian Fire Dragon, Will defies the odds by slicing through the Guardian's core instead of defending himself, then charges at Sion. Just then, Colette intervenes, conjuring an earth magic wall that halts both of them. She tells them that Julius has vanished after being dealt with by her. Colette chastises Sion for sabotaging Will's chance to impress the scouts and potentially ascend to the tower. Grateful, Will thanks Colette and rushes toward the stadium, determined to reach it before Julius. Suddenly, Will jumps into the stadium, flying through the air to fight Julius and claim victory in the contest. He lands firmly on his feet, eyes locked on his opponent. The crowd holds its breath, sensing the tension as Will prepares for the showdown. Let's zoom in on the Mercedes Collis, where Sarissa's trying to get Lady Elfaria's attention. It's like trying to wake up your bestie after an all-night anime marathon. She gives Elfaria a playful bonk on the head, the universal Earth to Elfaria signal. Sarissa's got the hot gossip, a list of potential magical prodigies, fresh from the scout's oven. She's practically bouncing as she points out this guy named Julius Reinberg. According to her, he's so perfect for the Ice faction, he might as well be Elsa's long-lost brother. Sarissa's already picturing him as Elfaria's successor, probably planning the passing of the wand ceremony in her head. The scene shifts to the announcement that the crown attack has reached its finale. Whoever claims the crown on the podium will receive the glory. Currently, all 3 members of Squad 9 face off against Will from Squad 6. Will feels confident, reassuring Julius that he doesn't plan to lose before apologizing to Donnan and the others. However, Julius smirks, thinking that Will is boasting for a so-called no talent. Julius performs a magic trick, directing it toward Will, who wonders if it's a smokescreen since he senses their magic within it. Realizing they are attempting to surround him, he begins to run, dodging their attacks even as his vision remains obstructed. Just as he prepares to counter Julius, they strike him a 4th time. Julius taunts Will, asking what he's doing since they haven't even moved a step. The audience gasps as Will sees 5 Juliuses in front of him. Unsure if it's an illusion, he watches as Julius uses Iceplosion, catching Will off guard in a sudden explosion of ice magic. Professor Werkner observes that Julius is employing the secret magic invented by the prodigy Elfaria. Elfaria has a series of spells named after her in recognition of her achievements, and Julius is using one of those spells. L1, Ars Vice, a clone spell that creates living ice sculptures of the caster. Will questions how Julius can use that spell, and Julius laughs, declaring it's because he is talented. He boasts about reaching the level of Magia Vander, asserting that Albus Vina isn't so special after all. Will breaks free from the ice and charges at Julius, but Julius maneuvers his clones to cast spells as well. Will realizes Julius has created a barrier using his clones as anchors, trapping him. Julius uses his Zelunia Collis, leaving the audience in awe of the spectacle. Professor Edward believes it's a remarkable feat for any mage to win a battle without even moving. Julius could earn over 10,000 credits and asks the scouts if they see him mastering Albus Vina's secret ice magic. He announces his intention to be Elfaria's successor, impressing the crowd. Iris thinks that Julius is exploiting Will's monstrous agility to enhance his own image, while Rosti grins, commenting that Julius will look foolish if he loses. Julius sees Will break free from the trap and thanks him, claiming his spell helped cool his head. He then resumes attacking Will, who skillfully dodges. Professor Edward notes how Will hides himself during the initial attack, before launching his counteroffensive from a blind spot. Will takes down 2 members of Squad 9, causing Julius's clones to start falling apart. He tells Julius that he knows he had help controlling the clones and casting Elfaria's spell momentarily. Will asserts that Julius is not even close to her level. Meanwhile, Elfaria tells Sarissa that she doesn't desire a successor, but rather a sword by her side. Julius insists that his Ars Vice is perfect. Will advises him not to lecture him since he's considered a no-talent. Julius attacks, but Will skillfully dodges. Julius warns that he will freeze Will's big mouth and attacks again, but Will continues to evade. Although Julius hates to admit it, he struggles to control 4 clones at once. He knows that without their support, the spell will drain him quickly, but he believes Will won't be able to identify the real Julius. Suddenly, Will closes in to attack. Julius is shocked and asks how he knew. Will explains that the average body temperature of an Ars Weiss clone is opposite to that of the caster, hovering around 36 to 37 degrees. If the caster isn't entirely in control, the cold will seep from the clones, much like the Frostwalkers, who leave ice crystals at their feet. Seeing his clones shatter, Julius becomes furious, incredulous that a no-talent like Will knows more about the spell than he does. Will tells him that Elfaria was his childhood friend, and they grew up in the same orphanage, giving him insight into her magic. He studied it out of admiration, even if he could never match her level. Elfaria smiles, believing their shared memories and Will's hard work will never go to waste. Will understands all the strengths and weaknesses of Elfaria's magic. As Julius attacks again, Will dodges smoothly, recognizing that while Julius is a remarkable mage, Ars Weiss is a spell Elfaria created when she was only 2 years old. It is not perfect, and it can be defeated. Will thinks that using it as a bragging point would make Julius nothing more than the Naked King. Julius feels ashamed, realizing that he was too proud of this magic, questioning if he's no better than an infant. He uses his magic to create 8 clones of himself. Julius declares it's time to overwhelm Will with sheer numbers. Will remembers being bullied by 10 Elfies and vows not to lose. Julius employs his Glacis Itier, attacking Will, but Will deftly dodges and begins dismantling his clones one by one. After breaking all the clones, Will delivers a solid punch to Julius, who tries desperately to avoid being hit, but ultimately fails. In the end, Will triumphs over Julius, leaving the audience astonished to witness a no-talent defeating an elite mage with over 10,000 credits. Wignall approaches Will, revealing that while he and Julius were preoccupied with their duel, he managed to grab the crown. Will is shocked to learn that Squad 12, led by Wignall Lindor, is declared the winner of the crown attack. Sarissa observes the conclusion of the crown attack while Elfaria, tears in her eyes, asks Sarissa if there's any spell that can allow her to return to the past. Sarissa is taken aback by Elfaria's confession, as she laments that Will misunderstood her intentions. She only wanted him all to herself so they could play together. She cries, realizing that now all the students are aware of her dark past. On the other hand, Sion is frustrated that Will managed to win against Julius. He is determined to defeat Will. Colette rushes to Will's side, sitting near him. Will apologizes for their loss of the crown but smiles, knowing he can fulfill his promise. They celebrate Will's victory, grateful for his fight on their behalf. Professor Werkner expresses his gratitude for all they have done for Will. As Will shares a drink with Mr. Donnan, Donnan asks if he got scouted by the tower. Colette chimes in, saying he didn't, and they didn't even win the event because of Sion. Will mentions that he invited Sion, but he refused. Regardless, Mr. Donnan is pleased that Will won and received a proper apology. Plus, he adds, Julius has to work in a dwarf's tavern as punishment. Colette spots Julius running and feels satisfaction seeing him get his comeuppance, but then notices Professor Werkner nearby. Since he didn't stop the chaos earlier, he tells her he won't intervene now. He expresses concern about how Will handle the events of tomorrow. Colette wonders if everyone will see Will in a new light now that they know his capabilities. After a week of dungeon diving, a 6th-year student from Regarden Magical Academy asks Will to join them in the dungeon, praising his incredible strength. Just then, Emma storms in, upset that she was planning to ask Will first. Other students soon join, asking Will to join their teams. As 6th-year students, Wignall Lindor, Sion Ulster, and Lyhanna Owenzaus pass by Will, Colette sees the crowd around him and wonders if this is what Professor Werkner intended. She steps in, determined to defend Will against any bullying, but Will is actually happy about the invitations. Colette lies, claiming she and Will have plans for tomorrow. That night, Colette regrets her hasty words, realizing it sounds like they're going on a date. Meanwhile, 6th-year student Rose arrives with tea and teases Colette, saying she heard about her date. Colette insists it's not a date, but advises Rose to prepare anyway, even if they're just going shopping. The next day in Urbis Reigarden, Colette contemplates whether it truly is a date and decides to treat it as one, despite her initial intentions. When Will arrives, he compliments her, saying she somehow makes his heart race. Rosti arrives late and Colette is surprised to see him. She asks if he's joining them and he immediately takes Will's hand, shocking Colette. Throughout their outings, Rosti sticks close to Will, never leaving his side. When Rosti goes to get drinks, Colette starts panicking, worried that Rosti might actually be a girl. Will reassures her that's not the case and explains that Rosti has been like this since they met. Rosti returns with 2 drinks for himself and Will, along with 1 for Colette. She offers her drink to Rosti to share, but Rosti reminds Will that he needs to get his sword maintained. Will gets up to leave, and after he does, Colette asks Rosti if they are more than friends. Rosti replies that he loves Will more than her, adding that they even shower together. Colette wonders about the relationship between Rosti and Will, just as Lihanna approaches. Lihanna, the epitome of perfection, stands tall and commands attention. She asks Will to follow her to the Urbis Regarden coffee house, wanting to form a party of 5 for a dungeon dive. Sion, infuriated, prepares to attack Will, but Wignall uses his illusion magic to create fantastical landscapes, capturing everyone's attention. Lihanna believes Will possesses something they lack that would benefit them in the dungeon. Sion and Julius refuse to be part of a party with Will, but Wignall questions their character for such a stance. He argues that Will has the brute strength of dwarves and monster-like agility. Unlike Sion and Julius, Wignall respects Lihanna's decision to include Will. Lihanna is motivated by a desire for fame and honor, aiming to secure a better future. Will questions why she's going through all this when she already has guaranteed post-graduation placement. Lihanna explains that she comes from House Owenzaus and feels the need to deliver overwhelming results to prevent ruin. She proposes that if they believe her party would benefit them, they must drop a coin into the goblet before her. All agree to form a party. Later, Will informs Colette and Rosti that he's joining Lihanna. The all-student praxis is set to begin in 10 days, providing a chance to battle 5 enemies and other monsters, offering the opportunity to earn over 1,000 credits at once. Professor Edward warns them that some may even die, recalling that 4 students perished last year. He instructs them on how to act during the event to become Magia Vander. They head to the connecting passage to the 7th floor Regarden base camp. Lihanna spots Colette, whom she hadn't invited. However, Artificer students are stationed at the base camp, allowing Rosti to join them. The students have 1 week to survive within the dungeon. They set up base maps and are instructed that if they choose to discontinue or retire, they must ensure their own safety. The all-student praxis begins. Logwell dishes the dirt on the all-student praxis to Lord Cariot. It's like a magical high school drama. The Thunder factions living it up, the Elf factions got their noses in the air, and the Ice factions chilling, literally. But Logwell's got his money on Incendia Barham for the Vander position. Talk about playing favorites. Logwell, the aide-de-camp of the Fire faction, informs Incendia Barham Cariot that the king has not yet returned from his expedition. Meanwhile, the all-student praxis begins, and Will is determined to achieve results and reach Elfie. Suddenly, they encounter a group of crimson ants. Will knows that mages are at their weakest in close combat, so he steps forward to act as their shield. Lihanna charges in to fight the crimson ants as she specializes in close combat magic. After defeating them, she urges the team to move ahead of the other parties quickly. Professor Werkner informs Will that the search spell is crucial in the dungeon. It's a common spell used to detect enemies and anomalies. Will realizes that the search range of his enemies is wider than his own detection. Wignall can sense all the enemies in one spell, prompting him to question Lihanna's judgment about Will. She believes Will will prove his worth when they face 5 enemies at once. Julius scoffs, saying those who cannot use the search spell will only slow them down. Mages can absorb magical traces into their wands, allowing them to store a record of battles to verify monsters and credits. Unable to absorb the traces himself, Will starts collecting item drops, which leads to resentment among his teammates. Colette asks if he's okay. Will reassures her that he's fine, although he worries he's becoming nothing more than a burden. They decide to take a rest after a day in the praxis. Wignall uses his Nardria magic to create an illusionary fortress of flames for their security, ensuring that monsters stay away. Lihanna instructs Will to distribute the rations, but Wignall refuses to take any, claiming that the elves only allow those they deem worthy to touch them. Colette angrily defends Will, but Wignall asserts that he only considers Lihanna worthy. Elves, coming from another world and living among dwarves, are a magical race that tends to stick to their own kind. One of the Magia Vander is none other than the Elven Queen. Lihanna emphasizes that their top priority is to defeat the luminous Nabarus, which is worth 110 credits, the highest they can earn in this praxis. She reveals that she assembled this party to take down Nabarus, aiming to conserve their magic for hunting other monsters later. She suggests taking the shortest route to the 10th floor unless anyone objects. Will has only earned 5 credits that day, but decides to go along with her plan. The scene shifts as a mysterious figure asks a headless entity what she is doing and if she has killed the students upstairs. She replies that they were getting annoying, so she eliminated them. Meanwhile, Julius observes monster corpses littering the 10th floor of the dungeon. They took the fastest route and didn't stop at any base camp, so they believe no other students could have reached this area before them. Will notices a lack of magic used. The monsters appear to have been torn apart by brute force. The dungeon is eerily quiet, and they are shocked to find the floorkeeper dead. They use their search spells to investigate. Will recalls Professor Werkner's warning that while the search spell is useful, it isn't infallible. It can struggle to detect crafty traps, and mages can use the hide spell to evade detection. Suddenly, a monster attacks Wignall from above. They all use their powers against it, but their efforts are in vain. The floor breaks beneath them, sending them tumbling down from the 10th floor into a dangerous zone outside the Academy's territory. Julius yells in disbelief, unable to accept the situation. The 11th floor and beyond are perilous territory where only high mages can survive. Lihanna, injured by falling debris, observes a vast region extending down to the 15th floor. The structure of the labyrinth and the power of the monsters differ from the previous floors. She warns Colette that they need to regroup or risk being killed by the dungeon. Wignall regains consciousness, haunted by dark memories. He sees the monster killed by Will. Injured, he hesitates when Will offers to treat him. Wignall insists on tending to his own wounds. Will assesses their supplies, realizing their baggage is wrecked, leaving him with only 3 sub-weapons. He notes that they have only 24 hours before their time limit expires, and suggests they search for Colette and the others. Wignall insists on following protocol and waiting for rescue, but Will argues that inaction will lead to their demise. The scene shifts to the 8th floor base camp, where Professor Eliza informs Professor Werkner about a stampede and the deaths of Bruno and others. Werkner wonders if it's merely a coincidence that even professors have been killed. Professors Edward and Werkner prepare to assist the students. Meanwhile, Wignall repeatedly casts his search spell, but becomes frustrated with Will's calm demeanor amidst the danger. Will explains his strategy, wanting them to work more efficiently by dividing their roles. He suggests Wignall leave enemy detection to Kiki and himself, while focusing on distant threats, drawing on his own extensive dungeon experience. Suddenly, Kiki signals danger. They spot a Gergesa, an 8-credit monster. Wignall uses his Verdes Lana spell to attack it, and he notices Will growing stronger during the battle. Wignall attempts an illusion spell, but it proves ineffective as Will steps in to save him from the Gergesa. Will defeats the monster and informs Wignall that Gergesas lack sight, but possess a keen sense of smell, rendering illusions useless. Wignall feels ashamed, questioning his own talent. Wignall's having a total Disney princess moment, calling out to Eleanor like she's about to vanish in a puff of smoke. He spots a flower and has an epiphany. He can't catch up to her, but he's not about to throw in the towel. Time to unleash his secret weapon, Bloom Fluria Magic. Suddenly, he's glowing like a human disco ball, wrapped in colors so vibrant they'd make a rainbow jealous. Petals start swirling around him like he's the star of the world's most magical shampoo commercial. And just like that, bam, he's hit with a double shot of determination and clarity. Glow up complete. The scene opens with Wignall confronting Will, the air thick with tension. "You're just a flunky, you know that?" He snaps, frustration boiling over. He is the only elf still at the academy after 6 long years, a painful reminder of his struggles. Labeled talentless and a disgrace by his kin time and again, he feels like a leftover, as Lihanna has pointed out during one of their more contentious discussions. Despite being one of the top 3 students in their year, he carries the weight of their judgments on his shoulders. Meanwhile, Lihanna stands beside Colette, her voice dripping with disdain. True talent finds a way to advance without worrying about the graduation process, she declares, casting a sideways glance at the others. Over the years, she has watched countless peers succeed, and she believes they are the real leftovers, clinging to their fleeting glory. Colette counters, her tone sharp as she replies, "You're just a big fish in a small pond, forced to watch a first-year student your age, Elfaria Albus Vina, rise to become a Magia Vander." In a quieter moment, Wignall confides in Will, his voice barely above a whisper. "My foster sister made me taste the despair of feeling inferior." His eyes betray a mixture of pride and pain as he reflects on her success. She was the exalted queen, the pride of our kin. Will's curiosity peaks as he wonders if Wignall means Elief Kanan, Eleanor Leos Alf. Wignall nods, a flicker of nostalgia in his gaze. "We grew up together. I thought I needed to protect her. But she became a powerful high elf, capable of creating the Kingswood." His voice drops to a murmur. "I worked hard to chase after her as she rose to become a Magia Vander." Will, moved by Wignall's story, promises to protect him until he gets back on his feet, a bond of solidarity forming between them. Colette, meanwhile, tells Lihanna about Will, a boy who has always worked hard, even when ridiculed for his lack of talent. "He fights with a fire in his heart," she asserts, pride swelling in her chest. Wignall, watching Will fight so fiercely, feels a swell of admiration, only to realize that Will is badly beaten from protecting him. Suddenly, Kiki, their loyal companion, makes a strange sound, her ears perked up, alerting them that the dungeon is generating more monsters. They soon encounter a swarm of burning monsters, and Will's eyes widen as he identifies them. "Those are Balkars, worth 11 credits. They're notorious foes," he exclaims, his heart racing. These fiery creatures are immune to physical attacks, their flames dancing like the flickering shadows around them, making them natural enemies of mages. The only effective counter is elven illusion magic, leaving them no choice but to engage in combat. Will turns to Wignall, desperation in his voice. "I need your help, Wignall. We can't take them on alone." But Wignall hesitates, self-doubt creeping in. "My illusion magic is imperfect. I'm afraid I'll fail," he admits, his voice trembling. Will, undeterred, steps closer, urging him on. "We won't move forward without risking failure. Believe in yourself, Wignall. Our dreams align. Elfie is waiting for you in the tower." Wignall's heart swells with newfound resolve, and he finally nods, his determination solidifying. Will charges into battle, adrenaline pumping through his veins, while Wignall attempts his Alluria spell, but it proves ineffective. However, Will's unwavering belief in him ignites a fire in Wignall's heart. He's surprised to hear such faith from someone when his own kin do not believe in him. Determined not to betray Will's trust, Wignall embraces his abilities, unleashing his illusion magic with a flourish. The air shimmers around them, and one by one the Balkars fall, defeated by the combined might of their resolve. Afterward, Wignall turns to Will, a genuine smile breaking across his face. "I'm sorry for doubting you," he says, shaking Will's hand, recognizing him as a warrior worthy of respect. The bond between them strengthens, forged through adversity and understanding. Sometime later, Will examines Rosty's magical map, tracing their route with his finger, while Kiki sniffs the scents of Colette, Sion, and others nearby, her nose twitching as she picks up the familiar aromas. Meanwhile, Julius and Sion bicker over water, a petty argument arising from Julius feeling that Sion is getting carried away as he improves his magical skills. However, both are humiliated by their perceived inferiority, the atmosphere tense and charged. Sion's instincts kick in, sensing monsters approaching. Suddenly, an evil sentinel appears, its imposing figure casting a long shadow over them. "Julius, summon your clone. We need backup," he instructs, urgency creeping into his voice. Professor Edward arrives just in time, swiftly dispatching the monsters with a flick of his wrist, his expression grave. "Everyone needs to evacuate to the 6th floor immediately," he orders, his voice cutting through the chaos. As the students scramble, Professor Edward informs Professor Werkner that all students are being evacuated except Lihanna's party. Werkner, anxious, knows their location thanks to Kiki's crystal, which is linked to his orb. They are on the 4th floor and time is running out. Lihanna, ever the leader, tells Colette that since their fall to the 11th floor, 16 long hours have passed. We're running out of food and water, she admits, her brow furrowed with worry. But Colette believes they've made it this far thanks to Lihanna's leadership and quick thinking. Lihanna, feeling the weight of responsibility, apologizes for putting Colette at risk. But Colette insists she feels guilty for selfishly tagging along when she wasn't invited. Will and Wignall eventually locate Scion and Julius after defeating the Sentinels. The four regroup, but Will notices that Scion and Julius still seem isolated, their camaraderie fractured. Colette spots Professor Bruno and starts to approach him when Lihanna stops her, sensing something amiss. Suddenly, Bruno's head falls, rolling ominously to the ground. The headless figure, shrouded in darkness, ominously wishes them a good day, sending chills down their spines. A man appears from the shadows, questioning how they ended up in this forsaken place. "Duke failed to finish you off, it seems," he remarks, a smirk playing on his lips. He tells Marze not to get angry, his tone almost mocking. In a fit of rage, Colette demands to know who they are, her fists clenched at her sides. The headless figure explains that they are merely villains intent on destroying the fake sky, a concept that hangs ominously in the air. Colette wonders if this refers to the Great Barrier of the Magia Vanders, her mind racing. The headless creature asks with an unsettling calm if they would mind losing their heads, its voice dripping with malice. As Colette prepares to attack, Will and the others arrive, following a trail of stones that led them there. They are still clueless about their attackers, fear coiling in their stomachs. The headless creature lunges at Will, sending chills down Colette's spine as it adds to its collection. Marze warns that a troublesome group is approaching, urgency lacing his voice. "We must retrieve that thing," he declares, pointing toward the commotion. They all notice a gate, an ominous portal, the Mage Queen's secret teleportation art. Stunned, Wignall identifies the monster that appeared on the 10th floor as the evil Grand Duke, worth a staggering 270 credits. The air thickens with tension as they brace for the looming confrontation, each heart pounding with the weight of their fate. The tower operates on a unique credit system, where 1 credit assigned to a monster equates to the strength of a mage with 1,000 credits. Thus, the monster with 270 credits is comparable to a mage with a staggering strength of 270,000 credits. Will warns everyone to dodge the evil Duke's attack, urging Lihanna that they must retreat. They sprint down a passageway, but rather than flee, Wignall uses his illusion magic. Unfortunately, the Duke tears through his illusions with brute force, leaving the group in shock. Confused, Colette asks what kind of monster this is, but Will recalls reading about it in the Academy's library. He explains that the evil Duke is a greater-class demon from the evil family residing on the 25th floor, notorious for its insatiable hunger for destruction. As they proceed, the atmosphere grows thick with dread. They see numerous evil guards and sentinels searching for them, their sinister eyes scanning the shadows. Julius, frustration etched on his face, questions Scion, wondering if they really can't escape. Lihanna senses despair crushing everyone's spirits and contemplates their next move. Will decides that fighting is their only option. Defeating the Grand Duke could disrupt the chain of command among the other monsters, providing them with an opening. Colette confirms that since the monster's leader has been summoned through the gate, creating chaos among the lower-ranking monsters would facilitate their rescue by the Academy. Julius, unable to contain his disbelief, scolds them for what he perceives as foolishness. However, Will insists he has a plan, even though he can't use magic himself. Wignall, Colette, and even Scion express their willingness to trust Will, inspired by his unwavering determination. Lihanna realizes she was mistaken. Will is not merely a shield, but a leader, and his courage ignites a flicker of hope within them. Will turns to Julius, his eyes sparkling with that "I've got a crazy plan" look. "Yo, Julius, time to level up. I'll teach you Elfie's spell. It's like unlocking a new character in your favorite game." Julius, intrigued, nods. The fight kicks off, and it's like Julius hit the duplicate button on himself. His clones pop up everywhere, swirling around the battlefield like the world's most confusing dance party. It's Clone Wars meets Fortnite, and the monsters don't know what hit them. Will instructs Julius on a technique that allows him to maintain incantations, his voice steady and commanding. By following Will's guidance, Julius can cast advanced spells that normally require lengthy incantations, a skill that could turn the tide of battle. As Julius charges the monster, he activates the guard of Narcia's grave, its shimmering barrier of ice forming around him. Wignall, Colette, and Scion channel their magic in tandem, creating a vibrant display of spells that fills the air with crackling energy. However, the monster remains unharmed, roaring with power, its iron wings intimidating, casting ominous shadows over the group. Will strikes the creature with his sword, but the blow proves ineffective. The Duke's thick hide absorbs the impact like a sponge. Determined, Will diverts the monster's attention, shouting instructions to Julius as he prepares his barrage of spells. Julius unleashes his trump card, but it also fails to affect the beast, the creature merely shaking off the attack as if swatting away a fly. Will calls on Lihana, urging her to finish the monster off, but when she strikes with her incredible speed, she discovers an automatically activated barrier shielding it from harm. Just as the monster retaliates against Lihana, Will instinctively jumps in to save her using Kiki's magic, creating a barrier just in time. But in the process, his goggles, given to him by Elfie, shatter, the pieces falling like glittering stars to the ground, a painful reminder of his connection to her. Meanwhile, Professors Werkner and Edward race toward their location, determined to save them from the escalating danger. The Duke crushes the ice protecting Julius, preparing to strike again with devastating force. Lihana recognizes the imminent danger and commands everyone to retreat. Coming from House Owenzoss, where young knights are often lost, she believes they must protect their comrades at all costs. Wignall resolves to stand with her, their camaraderie strengthened by shared determination. They launch an attack on the monster with all their strength, but they are swiftly knocked to the ground, their efforts seemingly in vain. Scion watches in horror as Wignall and Lihana seem doomed, caught in a conflict about whether to flee or fight. In a moment of despair, he hears Will, trembling from the loss of his goggles, urging Wignall to hit him, channeling his frustration into something tangible. Suddenly, Wignall begins punching him, blaming himself for their predicament. Will, however, halts the onslaught, blocking Wignall's fist with surprising strength. Rising to his feet, sword in hand, he instructs Colette to look after Kiki while he stands his ground. Colette knows Will is afraid, questioning Scion if he has ever wielded a sword against opponents far larger and stronger. She acknowledges Will as a coward who fears escape, yet deep down, she knows he is far braver than he appears. As they watch, Will engages the monster, aware that to defeat the Grand Duke, they must sever its wings to bring it down. Colette joins him in the fight, her spirit unwavering, but Will, lacking his goggles, feels terror creep into his heart. Yet he is more afraid of losing someone close to him. When the Duke launches an attack, Will recognizes the pattern. He has encountered it before in his studies. Colette resolves to give everything she has while the Duke focuses on Will. In the meantime, Scion charges in, using his guardian as a shield, and strikes the monster with his Aflam Berdelion. But even this advanced spell fails at close range, merely scorching the Duke's iron hide. Realization dawns on Will. Neither a wand nor a sword alone can secure victory. He studies the Duke carefully, searching for an opening when suddenly, a crystal falls from the creature, glimmering ominously on the ground. Rosti reminds Will that the answer lies in the union of wand and sword, the words echoing in his mind. He recalls a prophecy stating that one day, the wand and sword would unite, a fabled harmony of magic and might. As the Duke approaches, Will dashes toward his sword, calling out to Scion for the spell. "Now, Scion, use your magic!" he shouts, desperation lacing his voice. Scion directs his Ignis Rook's magic toward Will, the flames swirling and intertwining with the air around him. Will absorbs it into his sword, feeling the heat and energy flow through him, igniting his very soul. They watch in astonishment as Will becomes empowered, a bright light surrounding him, running toward the monster with newfound strength and determination. Fully charged and brimming with newfound strength, Will attacks with a fierce battle cry. The powers collide, and the monster suffers a devastating blow, the impact reverberating through the air as the Duke lets out a monstrous roar. The tides of battle shift, and for the first time, Will stands not just as a warrior, but as a beacon of hope for his friends. The monster evil Duke cannot survive this attack, and his body splits in two. Fireballs start falling to the ground, and Will feels his power leaving him. He sees his sword and wonders if it has gone back to normal. Wignall tells everyone that Will has defeated the Grand Duke. Suddenly, they hear a roar from hordes of sentinels and guards. Wignall wonders if they rush over here after hearing the Grand Duke's death cry. Lyanna knows they don't have any strength left to fight. Meanwhile, Professor Werkner is racing to save them. One of the sentinels is about to kill Julius when suddenly someone casts an advanced annihilation magic spell. Will wonders who could have done it, and then they see Mysteria's Noah, Aaron's old master. He is the king of Magia Vander, the strongest wielder of the wand. Will looks at the deep dungeon equipment and wonders if they are returning from an expedition. Mysteria's Noah steps up, radiating more light than a supernova. He's like, "Yo, Dungeon Darkness fighters, I'm blessing you with some of this sweet, sweet light magic." Everyone's jaws hit the floor. The mages are bowing so hard you'd think they're trying to touch their toes, and even the elf, who usually has a stick up their is too cool for school, is trembling like they just met their favorite K-pop idol. While everyone's attention is directed toward the Lord of Light, Will's eyes are drawn to him. A little boy with golden hair comes down and tells Will that he is surprised his sword is still alive. He asks Will for his name, and after Will introduces himself, he asks the boy who he is. The boy informs Will that he is Finn. Just Finn. The scene shifts to Marzi, who says to the headless figure that it is good they picked up the goods as quickly as possible. He prefers not to run into them anyway, but the headless figure tells him they have completed the mission, so now they can celebrate with a party from hell. The abnormal turn of events brings the all-students praxis to a close. 11 academy professors die, but no students are killed. Based on eyewitness reports, warrants are issued for the perpetrators, but no clues have yet to be found. All the survivors take a rest after the incident. While lying in bed, Sion and Wignall wonder about the creepy individuals who were crazy enough to murder the professors. Colette cannot believe that Professor Bruno is no more. Julius wonders what would have happened to them if Mysteria's Noah had not come. However, Lyanna gives them a reality check that they are all alive, and thanks everyone as the youngest among the knights. Colette brings food to Lyanna, who eats all of it, leaving nothing for Will and the others. They are all surprised to see that Miss Perfect has such a strong appetite. Will tells them that he is an avid eater himself, but he thinks Lyanna eats even more than he does. As Colette starts peeling the last apple, Lyanna thanks Will because, without his judgment and courage, they would have been annihilated. Will responds that they all work together, and that is how they got through it. Julius tells them that Will was scared and could not stop shaking. He yells at Will because he proposed a plan that put such a burden on him in the first place. Colette tells him to shut up, while Sion asks Will what the power was that absorbed his spell. They start wondering what it could be. Lyanna knows it is not enchantment, but she is unsure if it is magic or not. Julius shouts at Will, saying he should have told them earlier. Kiki starts scratching Will, who also does not know what it was. Lyanna suggests they ask Professor Werkner. Will remembers the small boy on the expedition team and asks if they know who he was. Lyanna responds that the boy might be someone from the Finn tribe. It is a tribe that cannot use magic but has extensive knowledge about dungeons. It is impossible to delve deeper into the dungeon without their help. However, Will wonders what it felt like when he defeated the Grand Duke. The scene changes to Finn, who is back at the head of the Rygarden Magical Academy, Cauldron Janub, after another long expedition. He shows her a souvenir, and Cauldron asks if it is the reported Mage Slayer. He tells her they ran into some shady people on the 4th floor and engaged in a battle. 20 high mages of the expedition are killed. They could not hold back against them, so they perish. He is willing to bet that this Mage Slayer did not just appear naturally in the dungeon. He informs Cauldron that Aaron requested him to go back for another survey and leaves the analysis to her. He comes to the main topic and asks her why she did not tell him about that boy. She tells him about Will, who is obsessed with wands. She believes that a new and significant impact will arise from this. For now, he leaves Will with her. but he warns that he will be meddling in his affairs from now on. Meanwhile, Colette is surprised to see Will able to move as he practices with his sword. Will is doing this because he wants to reach a new level. Julius is stunned to see him and wonders what kind of body Will possesses. Wignall believes Will is a warrior worthy of respect. Lihanna thinks that maybe his simplicity and dedication are his true strengths. Sion challenges Will to a fight, even though his body is in bad shape. They decide to fight, and the battle begins. Sion attacks him with magic, while Will dodges his attacks. Professors Edward and Werkner happen to see the duel. 2 months pass since the all-students praxis accident. Professor Werkner enters the class, aware that many students are still uneasy, but the school year is almost over now. As 6th-year students, this will be their final exam. Day 1 of the graduation exams begins. What do you think? Can Will rise to the challenge and finally meet Elfaria? We want to know your thoughts, so let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, give that like button a hearty smash, ring the notification bell, and subscribe for more epic anime insights. Until next time, stay curious and keep it magical.